Hi everybody! Today we're going to be working in this book by Kerby Rosanes. This is Fantomorphia, but this is I think either a French or a Polish copy, something like that, and it has actually got Fantomorphia and Geomorphia both together in the same book, so I'm not entirely sure which book the picture I'm working on actually comes from. I'm pretty sure it is Fantomorphia, but if I'm wrong with that, please correct me in the comments because I'm not entirely sure. And today I'm going to be showing you how I colour a metallic copper. It is an effect I have used in the past, not for quite a while though, I will admit. I did write down my colour combinations, so I thought I'd go over those today, show you how I was getting that effect, because it is something I've been meaning to show you, and because my theme this month is metal, I figured it's as good a time as any. I have done this once before on a finished picture, so I can show you that one to give you kind of idea of what I will be showing you. But this is a picture by Alan Roberts, so it is a kind of horror themed picture. So if anybody doesn't want to see any zombies or anything like that, please look away for a minute while I show this. But here we are. This is the image I originally coloured, kind of using this method. And you can see there I have coloured this frame as if it's made out of a metallic copper. And because it was a kind of horror themed creepy colouring book, I did add in a few little patches where the copper is corroding and giving this kind of turquoisey green sort of verdigris effect, which happens when copper kind of rusts. Iron goes, the reddish orange of rust, and copper does go this lovely turquoisey green, kind of like the Statue of Liberty, that kind of colour. So that's what I'm going to be showing you today, how I was getting those effects. Hopefully I can get it looking something the same as this, because as I said, I haven't done this since like 2020, I think this was. Yep, 2020. But I have had a little play, and I think I'm getting something along the same line, so I will show you these colour combinations and how I was getting that effect. So we'll just put him to the side. The picture that I'm going to be working on today to try out that kind of copper effect is this one here. It's another slightly spooky one, which kind of leads me to believe it is from Fantomorphia, but yeah, it's this one with the hourglass here. And you can see I have been playing around with those colours, trying to figure out how I did get those effects going on in that first picture. I think I've got the copper. The copper is working pretty well there, I think, to get the kind of shiny metal effect. And I've played about with the verdigris kind of corrosion colours here. And I think I'm starting to get the hang of it here towards the tips of his wings. I think I was going a little bit too dark here on his tail and his tummy. I was going a little bit too dark with my colours there. It's just playing about with the colours, which is my usual method of trying to figure stuff out, play about with the colours. I have done another little patch down here on this kind of skull area, and for that one I was bringing in more of the green rather than the turquoise. I brought in kind of a leaf green, but I will show you those colours when we get onto that. I think I'll start off with showing you how I'm getting the shiny copper and the colours I was using for that. So I'll zoom in and we'll get started. Okay, so I've zoomed us in a little bit closer now. I'll be working on this area here maybe to show you how I was getting the kind of copper colour. There aren't many huge areas in this image, unfortunately, but I think that's usually the case when you are colouring anything that's kind of metallic. There are not many huge flat areas to be working on. So I'll just work in here and show you how I was getting that effect. First of all, I'll show you the colours. And I did stick with Castle Arts for doing this because I think this is back in the day when I just got my first set of Castle Art pencils, so I was trying out colour combinations with those. So I've stuck with the same pencils that I did use, aside from the black, because my Castle Arts black has run out now, so I'm using the old faithful Polychromos Black. But these are the colours that I was using. As I said, the Polychromos Black there. I was using Van Dyke Brown 069, Terracotta 013, Cinnamon 012, and a very little bit of the cadmium yellow, that's 007. And when I am colouring metallics, I'll just move a little bit closer so I can see what I'm doing. When I am colouring metallics, I like to start with the darkest colours. So in this case, I'm going in first with the Van Dyke Brown because I'm leaving the black for the very, very darkest shadows. And we do have some shading here by Kerby Rosanes, so that is showing us where the darkest shadows would be, and that would be in this kind of fold of the wing here. So I'm going in first with the Van Dyke Brown, and I think, in my experience anyway, one of the tricks for getting something to look metallic is to have pretty dark shadows and really bright highlights. Kind of helps to make something look shiny. I'm not going to go into super realism, putting in reflections of colours around it or anything like that. I think that would make it a little bit too complicated, and I didn't on that original picture there. I just stuck to the copper colours, just playing around with getting something kind of copper colour and metallic. So yeah, as I said, going in first with the Van Dyke Brown. just to put in the darkest shadows there. And of course you can do more layers than me. I'm not one for layering super much, so I just try and blend the colours together rather than layering. The next colour I'm going in with is the terracotta, and this is the pretty kind of coppery kind of colour. The colour that you think of when you think of anything that's made of copper. I think it would be this one here. So I'm coming in with that one and just trying to blend it into the dark colour there. As I usually do, just lifting off the pencil pressure slightly as I get more towards the lighter areas, keeping the darker pressure for the more shady bits there. So that's coming in with the terracotta. I'll just do this little bit here as well. Keeping it fairly dark, fairly hard pressure up towards the top, towards where that darker brown is. There we go. Then I'm moving on to the cinnamon. I'm not entirely sure where I marked my light sources coming from for this image, or if I even did. Yeah, my light seems to be coming from the left, which is unusual for me, but as our light is coming from the left, we're going to be getting a little bit of a bright white highlight. I would say more around this point here, although that is kind of a little bit of guesswork on my part there, but we'll say our highlight's going to be there. So that's when I'm really lifting off the pressure there, going down into a softer colour. And then for the very, very highlighty kind of shiny areas, I was bringing in a very little bit of this yellow. What's that called? That is cadmium yellow. A very little bit of that yellow for the very highlighty areas, which I've said will be around here. That's a little bit of a guess. So yeah, that's not looking too terrible at all. And this ridge here I'm imagining to be really raised up, so that will be fairly shiny. I'll pop a little bit of yellow along there maybe. And for anything that's metallic, it's the same kind of principle, with a few shades of the colour, leaving the highlights pretty bright white. That's the kind of technique that I use anyway. I don't colour that much that's metallic, to be honest. It's going to be a fair bit of practice for me this month, doing my metallic as a theme. There we go. And I think the main colour to give that kind of coppery kind of look to it is this terracotta. That's giving the really orangey, bright colour. So trying to make that really come out. Going over all the shadows that we've actually done, going over that, like we did with the mushrooms, going over all those areas. Cinnamon. Just trying to deepen the colours now. It's kind of my second pass at layering. Although, as with most things, it's probably easier just to be watching what I'm doing rather than listening to me explain, because I do find things quite hard to explain, especially when I get into colouring something, which I enjoy doing. I do enjoy playing with kind of texture and trying to get sort of effects, I suppose is the way, get things to look like metal or look like rock. Or I do enjoy actually playing with trying to make things look textured, I suppose is the best way to say it. I do love playing with textures. Okay, my white Polychromos is over on the sofa at the moment with one of my whips, and work in progress, so I've grabbed a new one. This is white Polychromos, just to blend out this bit of highlight here and make it easier to work with the white gel pen. I do like to use the white under where I'm going to use the white gel pen, and also for blending. There we go. And then we can bring in the white gel pen for highlights along the very shiny edges where the light will be kind of glittering off the shiny metal. That's the kind of effect that I was going for. If you feel your shadows need a little bit of boost, you can bring in the black. And as Kerby has put in some pretty dark shadow along our kind of wing here, I'll go in with the black Polychromos. There we go, and you can layer as much or as little as you want, as I always say. Whenever you think it's looking right, then that's time to stop. You can see there though the difference between just the first layer here, where I've just kind of mapped out where each of the colours would be going, and this part here where we have gone ahead, added a few more layers, beefed up those colours a little bit, and got that metallic effect really coming through. I'll just go ahead and fill in this bit of his wing here as well, just to go over what we did on the first part and use the same colours again, going in first with the Van Dyke brown. Shading as we would for pretty much anything really, but I think if you want to make something look like metal, you have to have fairly defined shadows, and the shadows can be pretty harsh lines. Like there, where we've got a really quite a harsh shadow there underneath that kind of ridge of that wing there. That was the Van Dyke brown. This is the terracotta, just building up those layers slightly. And this part of the actual body of the colour can be blended slightly more, but I think if you leave the shadow fairly harsh like that, then it kind of adds to the sort of metallic appearance. Although I am no expert, this is just what I find works. I think it works pretty well. So there we are with the terracotta. Next, going in with the cinnamon. There we go, and for the very light highlights, I was bringing in a tiny little bit of this yellow, which is called cadmium yellow. I'm going to leave a little bit of a highlight there, bringing in the white Polychromos again, a little bit of a highlight there. We're starting to move down there into a little bit of an area of corrosion that I've got going on the edge of that wing, and I think this is one of the areas that's worked pretty well. So I will show you how I was getting that and the colours that I was using. Where can I show you that? I think I was planning to have this whole bottom corner, or most of this bottom corner, to be the kind of corroded verdigris kind of greeny colour. So I'll show you the colours I was using for that. Again, the Polychromos black and white. The white for a little bit of blending, the black for the really dark shadows, and the other colours I was using, again I'm sticking with the Castle Arts pencils because these are colours that I used in the first place when I first tried out this effect, and I liked how it was going, so these are the colours. Obviously the black and the white Polychromos, and we have a Viridian, which is 052, Teal Green Light 049, Terra Verde 064, and Leaf Green Light 061. And to get that kind of corroded effect, what I found the best way to make that kind of corrosion kind of effect is to start with the Viridian. And this is the colour for the really dark shadows. With a little bit of black can be brought in if you really want kind of a bit of extra boost to those shadows there. This isn't really hyper realistic for the kind of verdigris corrosion here, but it gives the same kind of effect and colour, so I think it works pretty well. And the way I found best to use these colours after a little bit of playing, and I always encourage it just to play with the colours, see what you can make happen. You might end up with something even better than what I've come up with. But yeah, kind of doing your darkest shading with this kind of green colour. I probably will go on and finish this whole picture, even though this side here is probably a few bits of trial and error going on there. But that's all part and parcel of the kind of colouring journey. I think is the trial and error. Try things out, see if it works for you, because the way some people do different effects and stuff may not work for you. So try things out, try your own little ways, and you may end up working a lot better. So there we are, that's the darkest colour anyway, that's the green. Then I move on to this Terra Verde, which is a very kind of desaturated green. And I'm going fairly lightly going over the dark green and expanding out. And these colours are what seemed at the time to work best for the Castle Arts pencils. I'm not sure if there are any better kind of turquoisey colours in any other sets. But I quite liked how these were working, so I've sort of stuck with it. And as I said, I do love playing with textures. Just adding a few little kind of dots out over the edge there. And then very, very lightly bringing in this teal green light to give a little bit of that more turquoisey, bluish colour. And towards the edges of these patches of colour, these patches of the green colour, I found it works quite well to fade out into very, very light colour, and there'll be a lot of white around the edges. Where the metal is turning kind of powdery as it corrodes away. And there we go, a little bit of that teal green. Not very much of the leaf green light. This is more on the very edges where the highlights would be, and where you're actually blending into the copper is where I found that was working the best. But you can add this in pretty randomly. It's because this is corrosion. It's not a flat texture. So we don't want any flat colouring. Okay, something along those lines, I think. And then I was blending that with my usual Polychromos white. I was blending that in. And this kind of brightens up that turquoisey colour, knocks the greens back a little bit, I think, and turns it all into that kind of coppery, turquoisey colour. There we go, kind of blending those colours, making them slightly paler, blending them more slightly together while still seeing that there's patches of different colour in there. And we can also, as this kind of corrosion doesn't stick just with itself, you can add patches of copper where the metal still is coming through, kind of in between, maybe. This is the cinnamon. It's giving a hint that maybe there's a little bit of copper still untarnished in there. Let's add a little bit of the terracotta. Yeah, just shining through in places. And then around the edges of these patches of kind of corrosion, when I did a quick Google search looking at pictures, the edges of these kind of patches of corrosion were kind of white and sort of powdery looking in places sometimes. So I found the best way to kind of replicate that is to add in a few little spots with the white gel pen and then smudge it with your finger before it's dry. And I was using that along the edges of these kind of patches of the kind of verdigris corrosion and along the edges where the highlights would actually be. But along the highlights I wasn't blending, I was just adding the dots to give it that kind of texture look. You can even bring in actually inside the patches of corrosion. Add these little bits of the white to add to the texture. And for blending back into the copper from this kind of corrosion area, the verdigris area, back into the copper, we were going the opposite way with our colours than we did when we were colouring the actual copper, or I would anyways. Starting with the lightest colour, which is the cadmium yellow, and then building up more into the darker colours. So next would be the cinnamon. Then we have terracotta. I haven't actually really tried this since I did that first picture back in 2020, so you're kind of learning along with me here. And we're going in with the darkest shadows, the Van Dyke brown. We'll put a little bit of shadow behind there as well. Maybe we can add a tiny little bit of the green there, creeping into the copper. Finish off this wolf's head. And this wolf's head, I'm just working away on his head there, getting a little bit carried away. I do love anything like this, showing like kind of texture and different effects and having fun and playing around with the colours. The wolf's head would be raised up away from the arm of this hourglass going up here. So we're going to make that kind of highlighty, give it a lot more of the lighter colours. Again, not going for total realism here, just having fun with it. And for the inside of the hourglass there, I've just started playing with what's actually inside this hourglass here. That's mainly just, so far, just the marker base there, because this book is single-sided. Giving it cinnamon now. And a bit of yellow. Cadmium yellow, am I right? Yep, cadmium yellow. So there we go, this copper here, as we're leading into the area of corrosion, that's the shine is kind of wearing off there. So I'm going to go over that with the white. Hopefully that will give that effect. Whereas here on his face I want to go for a more shinier effect. So I'll give those. So I'm going to give these shadows pretty hard edges. Not do so much of the blending. My commentary hopefully is making sense, but if not, yeah, you can actually see what I'm doing here. So hopefully the pencils are different enough you've been able to tell which one I've been picking up there. If anything does need further kind of explanation, then please let me know in the comments. Not gone quite as well as I would have hoped there with his head. But I think, yeah, we are giving the impression there that we have got the shiny metal, and the metal's kind of losing its shine here, heading into the corrosion, which probably needs a lot more of that sort of white texture, the white dots. Not so many highlights down there as we don't have much shine, but I think here on the wolf's head, yeah, we would be bringing in the shiny highlights. Again, to highlight the difference between the shiny metal and that corrosion. Hopefully you can see the difference there on the camera. I think, yeah, highlights are starting to come in a little bit more up towards his neck there. But yeah, just play around with these colours is what I suggest, and sort of use the kind of tips that I've given you. Add a little bit of the texture as I'm doing here towards the edges of these patches of corrosion to have that blending in to the copper. With a few little bits of actual copper peeking through there, I think we get some fairly convincing kind of There we go. I think a little bit along that edge. That's worked, I think. Maybe, yeah. Blend that in very slightly there. And yeah, that's working, I think. That looks as if he's getting a little bit of a verdigris going on there. Just bringing in the black polychromos there. Add a little bit of extra shadow. This wolf's belly here. But yeah, those are the colours that I was using. Playing around with a little bit of white gel pen and dabbing that with the finger. Dabbing that with my finger to give a little bit of the kind of powdery looking sort of texture. Especially around the edges of these patches. Patches of the green that we've got. A little bit around the edges of the actual object because the light would be hitting it, but it wouldn't be super shiny. So if we just make that look as if it's got its little bumpy texture showing up a little bit more there. And yeah, I think we're working there. And the places I kind of place these areas of the green, those are pretty random. Wherever I feel that I fancy colouring it in mainly. I have no idea what areas this would appear on first, if there is any kind of natural order to that, but I just do it where I feel like colouring it, where I feel it would work best. We could maybe bring in, for this kind of curve of the arm going up there, if we bring in the shiny copper again behind there, maybe that would give a nice contrast to our actual wolf. Here is the green colour, so this is the Van Dyke brown, starting from the darkest colours, as I do when I colour metal. I find it works best when I'm colouring metal to work from the shadows to the highlights. Unless we're blending into an area of the green, in which case I would go from the lightest to the darkest just to blend in around these edges a little bit. Here we go with the terracotta, which is the main kind of copper colour, I think. The closest to an actual copper colour that I've got anyways. If you guys have any better colour combinations, then yeah, go for that. But I'm kind of limited to Castle Art or Arteza as my biggest set of pencils at the moment, and these colours are the ones I picked out. I think they work pretty well, and they're fun to do, which is the main part. The main thing is to have fun with colouring it. It doesn't have to be realistically accurate. We're having fun. That's the main point. And the idea is there. Okay, this is the cinnamon. We would have quite a shadow down there. If my light is coming from the left, I said earlier, which I'm not used to doing. Usually I do it from the right, but we have it from the left this time. Probably because that's the side I started colouring first. And again, just shading as I would normally there, but trying to make sure that we do have fairly bright white highlights and really dark defined shadows to give that kind of shiny effect. Let's beef up those shadows, a little bit of black there, because we are behind this wolf. And we do have some fairly dark shading from Kerby himself there, so yeah, let's play up those shadows. Probably getting way too carried away here. This was supposed to be a fairly short little tutorial because, yeah, basically I just use the colours. The metal, yeah, that's pretty much, I've got a defined technique for that, I have to say. But for this kind of corroded bit, the greens, it's mainly playing with the colours until I have something that looks about right. So just to sum up, I would say for the metal, dark shadows, really defined highlights helps to make it look shiny. Adding in the white gel pen is what I like to do as well. If anything is meant to be shiny, adding in the white gel pen. And these colours are about the best I've found for copper. I do have a combination for gold. I have two actually combinations for gold metal, which I want to try and do a video on also. One is Castle Arts for a very kind of bright, more of a bronzy gold maybe. And one is a lot duller for an older gold look. For a more duller gold, I use the Castle Arts, which is what I've been favouring recently because, yeah, I just think it works so well. But the technique for gold would be the same. Even with the different colours, you give the dark, really dark defined shadows, fairly harsh lines for shadows, and also the defined highlights. You can go into more kind of realism by adding in reflections. Like this green would probably be reflecting onto this copper here, but I'm not going to go into that and overcomplicate things. I'm just playing with the colours at the moment, and that is the technique that I use. For the corrosion, for the verdigris here, is basically use the colours and play with them. Just play about, making little textures, dotting on the white gel pen, smudging it with your finger to give a more of a powdery effect. And I find it's better if the colours are paler, not quite as dark as the ones that I had going on here. I think it's not working quite as well here, where I really went a bit heavy-handed with the green and the darker colours in the shadows. I think it works a lot better if you keep the colours fairly light and then blend it with the white, although blending with the white, totally optional as per usual. But I was finding, keeping the colours fairly light there, except in your shadows where there would usually be a little bit of shading. But yeah, feel free to experiment with those, because that's my usual technique. I play around with the colours until I have something that's working pretty well. And yeah, I quite like these little spots of copper coming through there inside that rust. And corrosion, it's not rust, is it? It's not iron, it's not rust, but little bits of the copper colours coming through in the green, I think, just kind of adds to that kind of effect that the copper is sort of corroding away there, turning into this lovely kind of green patina. Is that the word? So there we are. I think I'll zoom us out now so we can look at the whole picture, although we have only worked on a couple of smaller areas there, this little wolf here and the wing of the dragon, but I will zoom us out now back to the whole picture. Alright, we've zoomed a little bit further out here so we can see the full picture. If I have actually gone ahead and finished this one before the video goes up on YouTube, I will pop in a photo of the image here. And I really have enjoyed myself today. Just those two little bits that I have got done for the tutorial, I did enjoy myself. It is a fun little technique to play with, but maybe I'm a little bit biased because I do love trying different textures, different effects I can get with the pencils. And hopefully my explanations as I've gone along have made at least a little bit of sense, because I don't usually have tried and tested step-by-step methods of doing things. The metal, maybe, the actual copper metal, maybe, but most of the time I take the colours and I play with them. At least I think while I'm doing that on the film, you can pretty much see what I'm doing and the effect that it's making, so you can take that yourself and run with it, see what you can make happen. As I've said, the best way I've found to make something look metallic is to make the shadows really defined, really pretty dark, and pretty harsh lines for the shadows. And then bring in some really super bright highlights where the light would be hitting it, make the highlights really super bright, so the shadows well defined and the highlights well defined. And I think doing that does make it look pretty shiny and sort of metallic. Whereas the corroded areas, they're not so shiny, kind of white and powdery around the edges, and the colours are a lot duller to show that contrast between the corroded areas and the bright shiny metal. That's what I found has worked for me using this kind of method. To be honest, I haven't actually tried colouring iron with a rust effect, but that is something I might attempt this month, I think, and if I do, I'll try and do that on camera. I would imagine the kind of methods would be the same, with the rust being the reddish colour, the iron being a mix of greys maybe, and then a clear difference in the highlights between the two different areas and the shininess. But anyways, that's just future kind of food for thought on my part, I think. Coming back to today, I hope you did enjoy this tutorial, hope it did make sense. If there's anything that anybody wants a clearer demonstration of, or a better explanation, then please drop me a line in the comments and I'll get onto that, see what I can do for you. But as I've done it all on film, then hopefully you can follow along with the visual rather than the audio and actually see how I'm getting the effects. If you have enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Always feel free to drop me a line in the comments. Any suggestions, ideas for videos, things you'd like to see me do, any comments in general, yeah, please drop me a line in the comments below. I do read them all. Even though these days I'm not having a lot of time to go actually in and reply to everyone, I do read every comment that you give me, and I really do appreciate each and every one of them. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I'll see you in future videos. Bye!